Hello and welcome to Breaking the Cycle. My name is Dr. Alan Hyde, and today we're joined by a very good friend of the show who has joined us many times on the show. She's going to be discussing all kinds of information about mothers and momhood and all the wonderful things that come along with having little tykes running around, and we're going to get into all that information. I'll remind you guys, like we do every week, that we are not just a podcast here on Thursday afternoons. We are also a private practice for therapeutic services in Hurst, Texas. If you relate to anything that we talk about on the show, feel free to reach out. We've got a lot of information. We got a lot of education out there for you guys, and we would love to support you. But without further ado, Jessica, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. Good to see you in your new space.
Yeah.
So, really cool little area you've got going on here.
Yeah,
So.
thank you. I'm glad that we could get you out and coordinate a time. You've been busy with a new position over at the trade school. And
Yes, very busy. Trying to. I'd say anytime you're working full time and have kids, it's kind of crazy. And so learning a new position just adds on to that. And then
Sure.
Doing the private practice on the side just kind of, keeps a girl busy.
Yeah. Yeah.
This kind of thing. So.
And we've talked about moms, motherhood, the mental load on this show before. We're going to talk a little bit more about that today, but where do you want to take it today? We'll just kind of open it up and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, so it kind of struck me a couple weeks ago. I have not had a day off without my kids. I would say since 24, when I went to Europe for like 9 days with some friends. Well, I say friends. She's my sister-in-law now. And I just got to thinking, like, why? Because I was in the middle of doing laundry and just feeling overwhelmed and overstimulated, and got to wondering why I was feeling this way, and realized, I just haven't had time to myself. And part of that is because to plan time for myself, and I'm sure many moms can relate to this, I have to plan the time. And like you said, the mental load, like it's one more thing I have to do on top of all the things you're already doing. And so sometimes I think it's easier for moms to just keep going because it's actually more work to plan the time off than it is to just be there in those situations. The problem with that though is, right, like then moms are tired and overstimulated and they lack bandwidth, and then we start to lack empathy, and then we're getting frustrated with the kiddos, and the whole spiral kind of starts down that hill situation. So
yeah, that's a common one, right? It's like our internal world is going to then impact and bleed over onto these kids, and that can be a bit of a mess.
Exactly. And it's funny because early part of my career, before I was licensed, was teaching parenting classes. And I would emphasize oftentimes with moms, like, you've got to find time for yourself. You can't pour from an empty cup. Most of the curriculum talks about like finding ways to take care of yourself, because when you do the self-care, then we can take care of the children better. And it's so funny to think back to how I would talk to parents about like how to do this. Before I had kids, now being a mom, being like, this is a lot harder than I made it seem back then, and being able to find the time to do that. And so, for myself, it's often reaching out. So, for the HEB school district, the kids just had 2 days off this week. So Monday was Columbus Day, or Indigenous People Day, depending on what verbiage we're using. And so my daughter was out of school because the school district was closed. And then my son's daycare decided that it was a good day for professional development. So I had both kids home on Monday. And then HEB decided to do a professional development day on Tuesday. So then Sophie was home with me on Tuesday. So it was 2 days this week that I had both the kids. And you're just like tired and overwhelmed. And one of those days I'm partially working to try and stay caught up on things like that. And having to realize I've got to start to be intentional and find the time to take care of myself. Because if I don't, I love my son, but he's going on 3 and he has a lot of energy, and I spend a lot of time trying to keep him from ending his own life, either on purpose or on accident kind of situation. Because little boys just, and all the moms out there know, just boy moms it's a lot. They're not going to sit there quietly and color.
No.
They're going to probably break and chew the colors. Let's be honest. And so, trying to be able to find those spaces, because I'll be honest, there is not a lot of resources for childcare in the essence of like outside of babysitters and family kind of situation.
Even with babysitters, right? Very similarly to the conversation with like daycares gets expensive.
Yes. Oh yeah. Cause I mean, your babysitter's what, $10 an hour? You start to do the math on that. And you're spending twice that just in the evening, cause you and your spouse are going out, or you're going out or doing whatever. And then you're paying for the childcare on top of that. And so, you know, I remember, reminiscing with my husband the other day. My daughter's first daycare actually would do like parent nights. And so for, I think it was like $15, you could have the kids stay after 6:00 and they'd watch them till like 9 or 11 or something like that. And then you could have like a date night kind of thing. And so they got to just stay at daycare. You paid an extra $15, which when you're already spending astronomical amounts of money on childcare, you're like, well, what's $15? But it was nice. And COVID changed everything, right?
Sure.
And so our current daycare doesn't do that. I don't see a lot of daycares that do. And then your other options, if you don't have family, is like maybe a Mother's Day out, but most of those are tied to a church, which, you know, not all of us want to utilize a church for childcare. And so, yeah, it gets to be really hard to find time for yourself. And plus you talked about like the mental load of planning the time for yourself.
Yeah.
And so for all of those out there who have family with kids, and you don't, I would encourage you to check in on them, see if they need a night out. Because we do.
Yeah.
Even if it's like 2 hours in the afternoon, it really makes a difference. I think for moms and the mental health that they're dealing with a lot of times.
Yeah,
So,
I'd say so. I think it's pretty observable too, just even in these realms as I've worked with moms, like when they get those times, they're even a little bit more freed up to process during the week in therapy sessions, which, you know, it's like, that sounds funny, but it's like, this is just another aspect of like when you can free yourself up a little bit and take pressure off of the responsibilities that you know you're going to take, right? That there's a balance in that. It's like, as you find your responsibilities, it's kind of there's a duty to get there in life, but then once you have them, it's also a duty to balance out your work, your life, and the responsibilities that you have, so you're not burning out.
yes, 100%. And this is something moms struggle with regularly, whether they're working or stay at home. You know, I've had clients that the nice thing about seeing clients virtually is that, you know, if the kids are home, their kids are home, we'll work through it. But you can definitely tell the difference in their ability to process when kids are home versus when spouse or for whatever reason the kid's not there, or maybe they're napping, so mom's got some time to herself. They're able to kind of dive a little deeper because, one, they're not getting interrupted, but two, I've talked about before that like mom monitor isn't on. And so they're able to really look inward, and there's not this kind of exterior monitoring always going on that can be very distracting oftentimes. And so it's kind of like I think about the like beeping fire alarm people often talk about or joke about in the videos and stuff like that. It's what it is. It's kind of like you're da-da-da, and then it's like beep, and you're like, oh, fire alarm off, you know, and you're distracted all over again, trying to remember what's going on. And so being able to find those moments can be really important, because when you don't, right, like that's usually when things start to unravel quickly for most of us.
Yeah, there seems to be a theme too that I've noticed and been talking with a lot of people about in society of like not losing yourself to responsibilities, right? It's like shifts in society, shifts in economics, right? Shifts in family structures, our generation. And maybe part of why a lot of the conversation comes up on my end is because individuals in my life are in those phases of like really serious change. And not losing yourself to those things is really important. And I think chief among somebody who might lose themselves is a mom. And, you know, it's not even so much like, oh, that doesn't get talked about enough, as much as like it is important to talk about and to remember that moms do put a lot of people first. And so this message really is for moms to remember to put themselves first, you know?
Yeah. Even when it's in the simple things, like a skincare routine, you know, I can tell you how many times you get to the end of the night and either you've been with the kids all day and you're now like, how do I put this? You're now just like excitedly anticipating bedtime because you're like, I'm finally going to get a break. And that depends on your bedtime routine. Because, I mean, for some of us, I've been lucky enough, the kids, we've got a bedtime routine. We follow it. There's not usually a lot of fight about going to bed. But there are moms out there that like bedtime routine is its own struggle in itself because it's like, now we got to go to bed. Nobody wants to go to bed or everybody's overtired. And by the time you get through that, 30-minute to 2-hour process, you're exhausted. And what you're looking to do is sit on the couch and veg through either TikTok, Instagram, scrolling on your phone. There are plenty of other podcasts that kind of go into how that's not helpful, right? For many of us, especially individuals that struggle with like ADHD, it's that dopamine release that you're getting from it, but then it creates this kind of like paralysis and actually executive function and being able to get things done. And so it creates that really bad, cycle habit of getting stuck in that routine. And then you're like, then you feel bad because you didn't get anything done for the night. But at the same time, you also really needed the break to take care of yourself. And so finding the things you enjoy, be it a bubble bath or a skincare routine or a walk in the evenings after the kids, or, for those of you more vigorous, want to work out in the evenings. I find it hard to have the energy to want to work out after I've been tackling kids all day, but some people have it.
Yeah. That's why I throw them in the air.
That's your exercise for the day. I was joking with somebody else the other day. I lifted something like, wow, that thing's really heavy. And I was like, oh, it is? But I've got a 40-pound 2-year-old I'm lifting all day. So I kind of forget that, oh yeah, I guess that is heavy. And so, but being able to find those 5-10 minute moments to also be able to take a break and focus on yourself and whatever that is. And it might be in the brief moments that, they're independently playing. And so when my 2 kids decide they want to go outside and play, and it's like, okay, now I'm going to go focus on me for a few minutes, until, somebody's run into a bush with the Jeep or, slid down the slide wrong and hurt themselves, or they're arguing, because those things just invariably happen when kids are playing together.
Right.
But setting that intention for yourself of the day of like how you're going to take care of yourself that day. Because we've got the list of how we're going to take care of the kids or the laundry or the job. We just need to be sure we're adding ourselves onto that list.
Yeah, and it's amazing in society too how hard of a sell taking a few minutes for yourself is. And I get that, right? It's like maybe some of that is perfectionism, maybe some of it is just like not believing that a few minutes is enough. Whatever it is, it's a hard sell to get people to believe that 5-10 minutes here and there stacks up and is very worthwhile for not just your mental health, but just like your physical health and feeling good. But yeah, it's a hard sell, when someone comes in and they haven't been making time, to get them to take 5 to 10 minutes for themselves.
Yeah. Because even the basic hygiene things for moms will get put on the back burner. Because let's face it, trying to take a shower with kids at home is an event. Because either they're banging on the door because you're in the shower, or they're in the bathroom with you, or you're worried that like something's going to happen while you're in the shower. And so like just being able to do basic things like that, one, can help a mom feel really successful. And being able to get that done. But like, I ran across, I don't know what kind of like meme or GIF or whatever it was, of like moms when they've come out of the shower, and it's the picture of like Cinderella. She like transforms into her dress kind of situation after being in her like rags. Um, but it can be like transformational just being able to get that shower. And so like for myself, I splurged and got me like one of the like hyaluronic serums for my face because I'm not normally a person that's big into like facial care. But now it's something I look forward to is like I'm excited to get the kids down because then I get to come downstairs and I get to like I don't know, be girly and do makeup, take my makeup off and put my serums on and put the lotion on and just kind of do a nice little skincare routine that's all about me. That, my kids aren't taking my things or being a part of it because they are so much into everything mom does anyway.
Yeah, until they're not, but that's a while from now, and that's a
Yes.
lot of years of kids just following like little ducklings.
Pretty much. And I mean, in it, depending boys or girls and your child and their attachments, you've got at least 18 years until they might detach a little bit. And even then you've got the kids that stay at home longer. Though I will say the mental part of it shifts as they start to get older, and that's nice. Because like, as I remember, as Sophie kind of reached 4, there wasn't always as much anxiety every time she was around, or every time, one, she wasn't getting upset all the time, which is great. And for those of you at 2 and 3, I promise there's light at the end of this tunnel. Because it feels like they melt down over everything. But as they start to reach age 4, the rationale and the ability to rationalize starts to kick in. And so you're actually able to have conversations with them, and it's so nice. And you kind of don't trust it at first, but then you do. And so I got to have like a year of what it's like to have an independent kiddo, and then we decided to start over again. And then, now that Fred's almost 3, the sound of him doesn't set off the red alert in the brain. I don't know how else to describe it. But that biological response of wanting to go like take care of and check on and nurture because you've heard them make a noise, that starts to kind of wane away. And so they're able to be more independent and you're not as mentally taxed by it. But that doesn't mean they don't still want to like sit with you on the couch or share your food all the time. Or, if you've got daughters, that want to share either clothes or makeup or perfume or your bathroom space. It's different when you've got somebody with you all the time. Right. But they always kind of seem to pop up even as they're older. And so making that space for yourself can be really important.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's also a rising trend of just people staying home longer into the 20s. And that could be its own conversation all in and of its own. We could have all kinds of funny jokes about it. But there's a reality to, I think, of there are certain generations that didn't do the greatest job of putting themselves first, right? Holding, I wouldn't even say proper, but just like healthy enough boundaries that has resulted in, I mean, we can't, the proof doesn't lie, right? People at an alarming clip staying home and living with their parents past 25, 26, 27, 28 into their 30s. That's not a crime. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with you, but what I am sharing is that for a lot of cultures, that tends to be an eroding factor in a relationship, and it doesn't allow, especially for like young men, as I speak on men a lot, is like, that doesn't allow for your own adventure to take place. And now you've lost like a lot of prime years to have those adventures, to explore like what directions you want to go in life. So moms taking time for themselves also has like long-term benefits for children as well.
Oh, yes, 100%. Because you have to realize as a parent, you are always teaching. So everything you do, you are setting the example for your kiddos. And so if we are always self-sacrificing, for them, for partners, for family, we're setting the tone that it's okay to neglect ourselves in those situations. And so it's really important, for yourself, but for the kids to set those boundaries so that they can see what healthy autonomy looks like, and what that balance can be when they become adults and when they have relationships and when they have kids. And, you know, there's been conversation a lot lately around the fact that as moms, we often struggle with the perception of a clean house, right? Because that's what we're getting judged on, is like, you're not keeping care of the home if the house isn't clean. But what we often forget about previous generations is that I think the term we're using is like, you were a bedroom kid, meaning you spent majority of your time in the bedroom. All your stuff was in your bedroom. Your stuff wasn't anywhere else in the house. And so it's easier to keep the house clean. Whereas the millennial generation, we're having essentially what we call living room kids. So like kids are welcome to be a bigger part of the household than what they used to.
That's interesting. I've noticed that over the years, right? Because we
Yes.
come from a generation, and as you were saying, I was like, yeah, my stuff was in my room. That's where my parents wanted it. It was not allowed in the living room.
And that you were told, go to your room and go play.
Yep.
Or go outside. Because there is a whole generation that, like, essentially you were shoved outside, door was locked, and you were not allowed back in it. And you're seeing, you know, as mental health takes hold and we start to understand what's healthy and unhealthy behaviors, you have a generation of parents who want their kids to be involved and want to be involved with them. But what we forget is that then we're not having that time for ourselves. And so being okay with the messier household. But that might mean that maybe we have a few less toys, right?
This is a big one. This is a big one. Because I've heard this many times from mothers who run in the social circles that I'm in, of like, I don't want to have to manage the thing. You know, I don't want, I just don't want it could be a small thing.
Yes.
Yeah. And a big part of me understands that too, even as like, you know, like in my house where it's like a bachelor house, right? It's like they're very minimal things there because I don't want to manage all the things. So I get that aspect too, which I think leads into like another question, having like a mom here who works with moms, and you've seen the gambit of like moms who are single moms, moms who are in a partnership where maybe the male counterpart doesn't communicate well or does communicate well, all the dynamics. But what would you say to moms who need some time for themselves and they found themselves in a situation where they're now a single mom, which also tends to be a big percentage I've noticed kind of in the DFW area, like any metroplex, that's a push that's a development is the better word. That's a development over the last 20, 30 years. As I think, right, conversations around mental health arise and women understand not to stay latched into situations that aren't good for them,
Right.
as well as men. This isn't a man-woman conversation, but what would you say to that mom who's a single mom managing all the things? What does she need to do to get the time for herself?
Yeah. And that, I think that is the group of women that struggle the most, because depending on your support system, you know, and if you don't have like a family support system, trying to find a mom support system, because there is tons of social media groups out there. They're not all created equally. I will say that. So you will have to kind of find your group, but those are the times that setting the limits with the children, especially as they get older, so that you can have space to yourself. And so like in my household, you know, we still do nap time now because Fred's little, but when Sophie got older, you know, she quit napping once she, you know, was like 4 or 5, we still did quiet time in the house. And so this was a time that she got to spend 30 minutes to an hour, depending on what I was looking for. She got to hang out on her tablet because we didn't do a lot of TV. And then I had an hour to myself to do whatever I wanted to do. And even when she quit napping, we just made it quiet time so that I still got quiet time. And so finding ways to incorporate moments like that with your kiddos can be really important on several levels. One, you're getting a break. 2, they're learning how to either self-entertain or find a quiet activity, but to be alone for a little while. And because they, you know, we want them to grow up. We want them to learn skills and independence, and that means not always being around mom anyway. And so encouraging that independent task and play. And so, even if it's not a tablet, having some toy item project that they only get to work on during quiet time. That way for them, it's also like a coveted space. And then they're able to recognize like, oh, I get time for myself now too. And it's been kind of cool because, Sophie's 8, Fred's 2.5 going on 3. And he always wants to play with her. But let's face it, she's 8. She doesn't always want to play with him.
Right.
And so she has learned in this is that she will take time for herself. She'll be all like, I just want to go play by myself for a little bit. I'm like, okay, kiddo, like go play by yourself. You just have to let me know you want the space. And so sometimes it's just communicating even to our kiddos like, hey y'all, I need a break for a little bit. We're going to have quiet time. We're going to have safe space time. We're going to have calming corners, whatever you want to call it. But to help allow that space so that you can each do your own individual thing for a little while. It might be setting a timer for your younger kiddos, or having a clock that is color coded on the wall, to be like, okay, well, when we're in the red, right, we're going to go do our own thing and we're going to do X, Y, and Z. And then when it's in the green, we can bother mom again or whatever the case might be. But you're setting boundaries and you're teaching them what those healthy boundaries are too.
Yeah. And there's two things in here that jump out at me of like, there's when you're in middle school, high school, right? There's obviously people get bullied with the term of like mama's boy, right? This kind of concept. But there really is a practicality of let's say in a heterosexual household, this is what benefit of a dual household with a male and a female is the male kind of unconsciously reminds the children to like get off of mom, right? And I'm not saying that doesn't happen in other types of relationship dynamics. I'm just speaking from the perspective that I know as a heterosexual male. But the bigger question I wanted to ask, and this is kind of a humorous one, is like, what do you say to the older generations who, when we as millennials with kids running around, utilize the tablets at times, right? Not excessively. Some use it excessively, that's fine, but utilize them to get that space and the kid is doing something they enjoy. What would you say to that older grandparent to back them off, to understand that the tablet isn't always the devil?
Yes. Yeah. Where they're all like, oh, so the TV's the babysitter now? And it's like, now listen. Okay. One, it's not like you're sending them off with a tablet free range, right? You usually have a show or a specific game that they can play. But understand that I talked to, thankfully my parents are a little bit more up to date, so we don't tend to have these conversations too much. But I always let them know, like, technology has its benefits when utilized appropriately, right? You see it, I mean, they're spending plenty of time on the tablet in schools with the games and things that they're learning and using. And so it's about the intent in which you're using it.
Right.
And so I usually let those family members know that, the 30 minutes or an hour is not going to cause the brain rot you think it will. Right? And it's okay. Now we're spending all day on the tablet. That's a whole different story. Right. But as moms also not to feel guilty in utilizing this as a tool. That's what you have to think about it as. And I do think moms a lot of times, especially in the current age that we're in and the evilness that the television plays sometimes and the judgments we have towards kids who have a tablet in their hands, understanding that this is now a tool that we use, and it's about the intentionality you're putting behind it, right? So she has very specific shows she gets to watch, and most of them are PBS. And so that she is ideally learning something or playing a game that's teaching her something in that moment. We're not just rotting watching a cartoon in those situations. And that, as I've told my parents, like, this is so I can take a break because I need that boundary right now. And this is how I know how to do it. If you've got a better idea, I'm open to it. if you want to take the kiddo for a couple hours, you can.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, there's that aspect. And there's also the aspect of just observing humans as long as I have, is that older generation, they didn't have a better way to do it, or else these generations of people would not be exploring the things that they're exploring now. We learn, we grow, we adapt. Technology has grown with us. It's now probably outgrowing us, which is another interesting conversation. But I like the point that you made. It's like, this is a way that we've found that works. The same way that when we were real little, we had dolls and action figures and things like that. And if you would have taken that away from me, I would have had a tantrum too.
Oh, yeah.
Because that seems to be the big conversation. It's like, well, they have a tantrum when you take it away. It's like, if you would have known me when I was a kid, if you would have taken away my favorite thing, I would have had a tantrum too.
Yeah.
And so would those older generations too, when you took away their wooden toys back in the day or whatever it was.
Yeah, because it's going to be about communication. We very often as adults forget what it was like to be kiddo, and that just because I, as the adult, have the plan for the day, that doesn't mean I've communicated what the plan is to the kid. And I always joke, I was like, we're essentially expecting kids to just kind of follow us along and not fall in a pothole along the way. Whereas the kids just wandering around, like hoping that, something bad's not going to happen. And so we have to communicate what the plan is for this item too, right? And so when we're giving kiddos tablets and TVs and toys, it's letting them know and having those activities to help them understand that we're progressing from this space to this space, right? And so having that conversation like, hey, it's quiet time, so you're gonna have this for about an hour. I'll come up and let you know when we're done. And usually I'll be like, hey, you got about 5 more minutes, and then quiet time will be over, or whatever the case might be. For my son, we watch a few shows in the morning as I'm getting them ready for school, and so he knows that we watch this one show, and then we watch one of those like little shorts, either like Bluey, or there's a car shorts or a Spidey short. It's a quick like 3 to 7 minute video. And so he'll get to choose one of those. I'm like, okay, when this is done, we're going to go get ready for school. And boom, it's done. We go get ready for school. And so it does take, as with anything, you're kind of training and teaching them what we're doing. So you're going to get pushed back the first couple times. The trick is to be understanding, like, I know you're disappointed, but now it's time to go get our clothes on. And it feels a little bit like a struggle at first, but as the weeks go on, that will become less. And so recognizing we do have to communicate with our kids just like you would communicate with a work partner or a friend when you're going to transition, and how whatever it is you're doing is going to work. We can't just expect kids to blindly follow what we're saying because we're saying it, and them not have a meltdown in that situation. Right. Because just like if I suddenly took your tablet or toy away, you'd be like, dude, what the hell? Yeah. Yeah. And you'd have a little bit of a tantrum too. And so being sure that we're communicating those things when we do them.
Yeah. And calling out as well. It's like being able to hear the child's language, when they're telling you that it's not fair, they're not going to say that to us that way, the way we would say it to each other, that it's not fair. They have their own way of communicating these things that often sound like a tantrum, but really they're just trying to understand the world. And I think a lot of that gets misinterpreted. Like, see, it's this media stuff, it's these tablets. It's like, no, the child is trying to understand the world and fairness and learn valuable lessons, that things aren't fair when the adult has a direction that things need to go. That's a tough one. And being aware of those things are really important as well. They come up a lot around the technology. Yeah.
And, and mind you, it's also dependent on neurotypical versus neurodivergent kiddos, right? Because we're motivated by different things and our brain functions in a different way. And because you talk about, I was like, oh, see, they always tantrum, or whatever the case might be. And I always want to have that conversation of like, but did you communicate? Right? Because the older generation can often expect compliance and obedience
I have to fight it in myself when I'm dealing with kids of like, that was how I was raised. And I know it didn't, like, these are things I've worked to unravel in my life. And yet when I'm around kids, I still want to do it. And I'm like, Alan, chill, dude. You
Yeah.
don't need compliance. What you need is connection.
Yes.
That's what the kid is craving. When you ever see them emulate your behaviors, and when they are right, it's like they could smell your fart before anyone else. They're
Pretty much,
right
yes.
there. It's like they just want that connection. You don't need their compliance. They'll be compliant if you communicate, like you're saying. If you just let them know what end is up, they'll fall in line.
Yeah, it's amazing how many times, my son will essentially dysregulate because he's mad because the transition didn't happen in the way he wanted it to, or he didn't get whatever it is in the way he wanted it to. Because kids are individuals. They have an idea, they have a plan, they have a way they think things are going to go in their own mind too. And how many times that when I'm in a rush or in a hurry and I get frustrated and I go for the compliance or obedience and the meltdown gets worse, it ends up actually taking longer. Whereas if I just took the time, took the deep breath and went, hey, dude, you want a hug? How much quicker we're able to come to an understanding and minimize the whole meltdown situation. And I have to remind myself of this quite often because, I love him, but he's an independent kid who wants to do things his own way. And so I have to practice this. And so just the other night, I have found with him that if I come home and he does not get a hug from me, like at some point we are going to have a meltdown. He's not ever going to ask for the hug. It's kind of this like expectation connection to happen. But the minute that like we want to transition to something, he's looking for that, as you say, he's seeking that connection. And so I find if I'm like, hey, do you just want a hug? He might reject it at first. No, I don't want it. I'm like, I'm all like, oh, we're really sad, angry, frustrated, whatever the emotion is. And I'm all like, you sure you don't want a hug? And then, yeah. And then he'll go and reach for the hug, or he'll reach to be picked up, or whatever the case is. And then we're able to calm down and we're co-regulating together in that situation. And this, it doesn't work just for 3-year-olds. I mean, my 8-year-old, we've had to do the same thing. Is she's not quite preteen, but man, that attitude's there. And it's the cock the head attitude, as I call it, because she'll and you're like, excuse me. And I have to like take a breath and be like, what can we teach in this moment? And so Oscar will be like, do you need a hug? And it's oftentimes that, because she's had a really rough day at school. And, at 8, we're dealing with all of the morals and values and friendships and trying to figure all of that out. And sometimes we're just looking for the connection. And so being able to offer that for them as well.
Yeah. Which is, as an adult, like how you were saying earlier, we often forget what it was like to be a kid, but what actually happens is that we consciously understand these things so well that we forget to think that, or we forget to realize that the child is beginning in those developments, but they understand it, and they're taking it in like a sponge. And the biggest one that you were touching on that they take in is connection.
Yes.
And if you pay attention to a kid for just a day, 90% of the things they're going to talk to you about are connection with their friends, connection with you, connection with their siblings, connection with their grandparents, connection with the pets. It's all about relationships. And they're taking it in like a sponge. And that creates what you and I know is a true responsibility for really all the adults in the community. And that seems to be something in society where if we talk about like what needs are presenting for our youth is like for the adults in society to be taking those responsibilities. And I guess I would share this sparingly, is like that maybe is something the older generations did get a little more right. And there's a bit of a pendulum swing where we found a lot of independence in the realm of like doing things properly with mental health. And we've swung to this like deep independence as adults that needs to come back and remember the kids, as far as I can see it on the outside, at a societal level. Now, I think in the homes, what should be echoed, because the internet can echo all the horse crap, is that parents out there really are doing wonderful things.
Oh, yeah.
And that gets lost on the internet. Say, shame on you, TikTok.
Yes, because depending on what your algorithm is set at will depend on what you get to see all the time. And it is hard because, you easily get into that compare and contrast when you start to see what's going on in social media. We're headed in the right direction. Do we have it all figured out? No. But I think as we do try to bring it in that correct position, allow the kids to be in our space a little bit more, we do have to figure out healthier ways to find that time for ourselves also. Because we've seen kind of the extreme ends of it of this is my space, you're not allowed in it, so that we can maintain the societal norm of expectations as a parent or family or the Joneses, so to speak. But at the same time, having, mercy on ourselves, and readjusting what it is to be the Joneses, what it is to have a clean home, the realisticness of that when
Tidy enough.
yes,
Yeah.
let it tidy enough. I like that, and being okay with that, and being able to have your space at the same time too.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of like the little adjustment and development periods for kids too. It's like I could see a lot of families, it's the interesting thing, maybe a million things to say about this, but it's like as a child develops, there's going to be a certain point in which they're cool with showering with mom and now they're not. Mm-hmm. We provide the lead as adults with those things where it's like really any family on the block is going to be navigating these challenges of like when a child becomes self-aware of their body, right? This is one of the areas and reasons why we have boundaries on people's respected spaces, even on a societal level, is for those purposes. But just because we shifted to more shared spaces doesn't mean that those concerns aren't still being navigated.
100%. Me and my sister-in-law talk about this all the time, and she gives me such kudos for it, but I'm like, this is trial and error, and I just happen to figure out what worked. As my kids have gotten older, you want to talk about like the privacy space, right?
Yeah.
So like we can't always use the bathroom together. Like sometimes mom needs her privacy. But being able to differentiate like privacy, surprises, and secrets, right? Yeah. And I had this conversation a lot in helping parents figure out how to navigate that space because you want to help teach your kids that some things need to be private. You also want to teach them like we don't keep secrets, right? Because that's part of that grooming aspect you can see with like human trafficking and abuse and things like that. But then, the surprise party for mom, right? And so I talk about like privacy is where we need space for ourselves because we, are taking a bath, taking a shower, going to the bathroom, changing clothes, whatever that case might be. But privacy is also in information that helps keep us safe. So the code to the front door or the code to your passwords and stuff like that. Those aren't secrets. You're keeping it private because we're trying to keep us safe, right? Whereas a secret is usually something somebody tells you and they don't want you to tell somebody else because they think it'll get somebody in trouble, right? And I always tell my kids, and I'm like, if somebody ever tells you something that makes you uncomfortable, always check with me first, okay? Because your body's trying to tell you something in that situation. And then let's talk about secrets and surprises, right? So there's like good secrets and then there's a surprise. And so a surprise is when we've got like a good secret that mom's going to be happy about later, right? And so like our birthdays, right? So mom's going to be excited about to hear that. Cause she's not knowing about it forever. We're just keeping it for a little while kind of situation. Versus, we can never tell mom, I told my daughter, I was like, red flag number 1, if they say mom can't know, you should be asking questions. Why can't mom know? Right. And going from there. Because, unfortunately we live in a society where we have to help our children learn to navigate that. There's,
there's residue, right? From, I think a millennia of generations where things were very secret. You see that in institutions. It's why it's all what all the movies and social media are about these days. Is like all the institutions and the ways that things were kept secret to protect people who didn't need to be protected.
Right.
And that still happens, right? This is why this lesson you're talking about of like the difference and teaching kids those differences are so valuable, because when you think about privacy, secrets, and surprises, they're going to interact with that their entire lives.
Oh, yeah.
These are fundamental building blocks of like interpersonal relationships. And you better believe people are going to need and want their privacy, and they're going to need and want you to be able to keep certain secrets that are helpful. And they're going to want you to not keep secrets that are harmful.
Yes.
And that, I think, is a very valuable thing that you hold, because I'm sure there's even adults listening to this and maybe even haven't heard that perspective, that some secrets are helpful and joyous. And then it's that old saying is you're only as sick as your secrets. The ones that you know you shouldn't be keeping, those are dangerous.
Yeah.
All right.
And they're the ones festering and creating your issues many times in these situations.
And it creates community issues, societal issues. This is one of the aspects, and we talk about this in our work all the time. It's like, if you're as sick as your secrets and you're holding on to that, it's only a matter of time before it causes discord in your family, with your friends, and in your community. And it may not feel like that in the moment, but give it 5 years.
Yeah.
Give it 10 years. It's going to sow seeds of chaos in your life. And for others.
I usually describe it to my clients as it's the thing that's rotting out your trunk. It's you've got we always talk about like our baggage, right? Or your closet of skeletons. Like it's that rotten piece in that skeletal closet that's starting to leak out the bottom, and you don't realize it's leaking, but it's leaking in the ways that you interact with people. It's leaking in the ways that you're short-tempered, or that you're reacting to somebody, or that something triggers you a little bit harder, or you get more upset than what would be normal. It's because that's still sitting there and that hasn't been dealt with. And so, got to be able to open the trunk, air it out, vent it in some form.
Yeah. Figure out what's rotten and take inventory of what you can salvage, right? This is what, it's like when the alcoholic comes in pure desperation, this is when they start to do their inventories, right? And, their fourth step inventory is the first time they do it, and that's that moment you open the trunk and get slapped by the smell.
Of all the rot that's going on in there.
Whoa.
Yeah, exactly. And it can be very, very eye-opening. And the more we're able to have these conversations, the more we're able to have, as Brene Brown would say, like we're able to be vulnerable. We're able to have those difficult conversations, and talk about what's going on rather than holding the shame of the secret. We're able to let it out. And so if we can have the conversations at that younger age so that they feel safe to share those things with mom and dad, if nobody else, then they're not having to harbor and hold it on through adulthood and have all the issues they've end up experiencing later on.
Yeah. And it becomes much more complicated, although not impossible. It just... to unpack the shame as the years go on, it just typically takes somebody trained well enough to help you unpack that, which can also be a tricky process of finding the right people to do that with, who can see it. Typically an indicator of those who've done it, right? But it's really important to learn these lessons. I am curious, we kind of sidestepped away, and thankfully we cut these into short clips too, so this will totally be fine. But do you let your kids play Roblox? Speaking of opening nasty trunks in society.
I don't, but we don't play a lot. I mean, my husband's a big gamer, but like we don't really have a gaming system the kids play. Sophie has kind of sort of started to learn about Minecraft.
Oh, okay.
So we've done that one. But no, we hadn't really ever gotten into Roblox. But then, I've heard all of the horrible stories about
talk about opening
Roblox,
up a
and I'm like,
stinky
maybe
trunk.
we won't be doing that one.
Yeah.
So, But I mean, the fact is, anytime you're on an internet system where there is a multiplayer interaction and there's other people, this is a risk that you're going to run into.
Yeah.
And so this is, as a parent, unfortunately, you kind of have to do your research and decide what you want to do and use and how you're going to use it. And this is where I always recommend like supervision with any of those models when your kids are on them.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it started, it's real interesting. I mean, just talk about like a institution that lacked accountability, and I think still does, right? They tried to make it like rated for 13-year-olds. Get out of here. You know, the kids are still going to play it and they're going to throw tantrums around it. But it's interesting how you were saying like these environments, these online environments through video games. I remember when I was young, World of Warcraft was really big.
Yeah.
And that's when you started to see a lot of these really wonky conversations between adults and children that were adults and children that were carrying over from like AOL.
Yeah, I
right?
saw like
Remember
AOL, I think
dial-up?
was kind of the initial with the chat rooms and stuff like that. And
Yeah.
oh yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's always going to be there.
Yeah.
Unfortunately. And so as a parent, you have to kind of decide what's going to work best for you to navigate that space. For us, the kids aren't that into it yet, so we haven't really had to navigate it too much. I'm sure as my son gets older, it is definitely a space we will be in because my husband's a gamer. But that's where, you know, with him, we start to have that conversations of what is appropriate things to talk about and internet safety and stuff like that, that I think millennial generation has down pretty well. Your kind of Gen X and boomer generation struggled with just because they weren't raised in it like the millennial generation was. But then because you're Gen Z and Gen Alpha, and I think Fred might be beta at this point, have grown up with the internet, a lot of that caution has gotten lost.
Yeah.
And they don't realize how dangerous it can be. And so kind of leaves it to your millennial parent generations and your other cautious to remind them that like, hey, unless you've met this person, and honestly, even when you meet people in person, let's face it, you should always take it with a grain of salt. You should always take it with caution. And you know, if you would never ask that person's opinion in the first place, then you shouldn't take what they say to heart when they say it.
Yeah. Yeah, and never take any type of invitation. And this is when you were saying like it's always going to be around. This is a cautionary tale for parents with Roblox. Just remember, and it's not just Roblox. This is any of these online video games, that their CEO came out and said that the child should be able to distinguish whether or not to have this conversation. That's the owner of these institutions. They do not care about your kids, and it is everywhere. And I'm not saying don't have your kids play this stuff. It's be aware.
Yeah.
Put the blocks in place, because the institutions on the other side getting your child to consume do not care about your child. They don't care. They're never going to. They're a consumer, you're a consumer, and that's their bottom line.
Yeah.
I could not believe when all of that was happening and the CEO came out and said, well, they should be able to distinguish. It's like, these are 5, 6, 7, 8-year-olds. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
We're protecting adults who are predators.
And even let's be honest, when you know your 5, 6, 7-year-old isn't going to know this conversation because developmentally they're not there yet. They don't even know what to expect. Even if you're 13-year-old, right, which we're saying the game is appropriate for, let's really think about where the 13-year-old brain is in development. We're doing what feels good and what we think. And if, let's face it, these people who are doing this, I wouldn't say are trained in it, but they're professionals in it. Like, they know what to do. They know what to say. They know how to engage this child in a way that makes them feel validated and cared for, and in spaces where they maybe don't, right? And so you have to monitor your kids when they're on these devices, and you have to ask them about the people that they're talking to, and it can't hurt to hop on the game and play the games that they're playing.
Yeah, that's how we did it. We hopped on and played the games to see like, okay, you can play these ones. I don't know about this one.
Yeah. But that's, you know, we go back to those kinds of conversations of, if you ever feel uncomfortable, or if everything's ever said, or anybody ever tells you don't tell mom and dad, that's a red flag. You immediately should come talk to me, because this is already a conversation that is concerning.
Yeah.
You know, it may be nothing, but like, let's figure that out together.
Yeah.
Because they're, you know, until we're 25, 28, we just...
Truly, though, you know,
we don't have the good judgment for it sometimes.
No, and there is something really truly to be said of like, it's these later 20s, right? This is when you see the bulk of people coming into even our realms in therapy. Is like, whoa, wait, what is this world, right? Yeah. Because the prefrontal cortex is like fully blood flowed and developed now for these conversations to sink in. And we live in a society where the consumer generation is a child. This is what all the professionals in marketing know, is that if you can market to a child, you're going to make money.
Life, right?
Yeah, you're going to make money. And it's also a really important thing to remember about like these video games too, since we're just talking about parents and we kind of went in this direction, is that you've got to be cognizant to look at all these things with your children, because on their end, if they're allowing these kind of things to happen, which all of these video games and media platforms are allowing trafficking to occur and all these kind of things, and they've made a value assessment on their end that it actually is beneficial for their bottom line dollar intake to not get rid of it.
That's unfortunate.
And now your child is engaging with it. Now, I'm not saying that they're inherently evil. I'm just saying evil takes a lot of forms, and we need to protect our children, which obviously in this conversation has been the whole point. But
yeah, I mean, the same conversation can be had about AI, right? It can be really beneficial, but we've seen where it can go wrong.
Yeah.
And so as with any technology, you just have to be mindful of what your kids using, how they're using it, and, be the spot checker to see what's going on in their social media realms. There are plenty of parent monitoring apps on there that you can stick on your children's devices to see what's going on. Because just as much as there's CEOs and things out there that are about the bottom line, there's also programs out there that, the bottom line is to make sure that children stay safe. Bingo. And so utilizing those to help you monitor, because let's face it, a lot of our talk today has been about like how overwhelming it is to be a parent and try and track all of the things and maintain all the things in the mental load. Sometimes it's nice to have a little assistance. And so there are things out there that can help you monitor these.
Well, and I think that's as far as like the technological side of the conversation today, this is a really good call out that you made, is that we can't keep track of everything, especially not with technology. No. You need the tools and you need the assistance from the tools that your kids are using. It's like when it was the state of Texas, they cut down on like for the high schoolers, you can't have your phones out, and so they ended up just using like the Google messages instead.
Where there's a will, there's a way, y'all. Right.
And so we, as the older generation that can't quickly as they
adapt.
can, we need to be able to use the tools too to help us parent and to provide care to these kids, because if we don't, then they're going to feel rejected, dejected and abandoned by us.
Yeah.
And I think some of that happens with the technology stuff of like, that's where the jokes come from, is like they really just kind of feel like they can't share it with us.
Yeah.
And if you track human behavior, that's when a person's going to feel abandoned. Mm-hmm. So it's just a double-edged sword,
Yeah. And I think that's where you go back to that connection piece of connecting with your kiddos is important to help build that communication piece so they feel comfortable coming to you. Something I've done with my 8-year-old, because we've run into a couple of situations where we've lied and we've gotten caught in it, and mom's been a mix of emotions, because part of you is that like older generation of like, how dare you lie to me, da 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 da. Sure. But then that heartache of like, I thought we had a better relationship than that, and you feel a little bit like a failure because your kid feels like they need to lie to you. And so I started a journal with her, and I told her, I was like, essentially anything you want to put in here tells me that like I told her, I was like, this is a book where we are going to have hard conversations. So if there's something that you're too worried to tell me to my face, put it in this book. And then my promise to you is to take time to read it and think about it before we talk about it, so that I'm not reacting to her when she brings me information that flips my lid, so to speak, in that situation, so that we can have a more productive conversation.
Yeah.
And so she's, been able to kind of come and tell me about, situations with friends or with teachers or whatever, where I might be a little bit more reactive than if being able to have this book, I'm able to kind of like, what? And have my own moment with it and not do it in front of her. And then really kind of think through like, okay, how should we handle this situation? What do I need to teach her in this situation, so that we can handle it better next time?
Yeah.
And so sometimes utilizing these types of things can be helpful. I mean, heck, I've even had couples who utilize email to have conversations sometimes to
Well,
minimize the reactivity.
right. And there it is. It's like, this is helpful for adults. I mean, I can't tell you how many times in my life I still have to learn, like, maybe I shouldn't have said that to the other adult. Maybe I should sort this out and then come with the balanced response. I might or might not have had to deal with that last night on my own side of the street,
Yeah.
Of just, we're human beings, and finding spaces to be able to work through and talk through what we need to, then approach the conversation and situation is always a better play.
Yes, but I will say it's not what we always do. And
Right.
so also realizing that when we flip our lid, when we lose ourselves in the moment, that connection piece you can always come back to.
Yeah.
I have done it a few times myself, is having to come back and be like, you know what? My bad. I was wrong. I shouldn't have reacted that way. You shouldn't be treated like that. People shouldn't say things like that to you. I will do better next time. Because it's about building the connection, but it's also, you let kids know that parents make mistakes too.
Yep.
Which means they can make a mistake every now and then. Yeah. So
I'll look forward to hearing about Fred's journal when he's drawing poop and stuff in there. It's not about his feelings. It's just pictures of poop.
yeah, we'll see where that ends up going. So
Little boys they're different.
yeah,
it's
we're
funny.
in this. We like to do raspberries and spitting right now, and so it's like, we don't spit. Stop it. Cut it out.
Yeah.
And then the more you make a big deal out of it, the more they want to do it. So you kind of have to just ignore it a lot of the time.
Yeah. God bless.
Yeah. So
Any just kind of last messages that you want to make sure you impart to, circling back to just like moms taking care of themselves, or just any of the topics that we touched on today?
yeah. So I mean, if you have a mom in your life, single or not, if she's got kids, feel free to reach out. Go hang out with the kiddos. Trust me, they are going to act a lot better for you than they act for mom anyway, just being honest. And you might have some fun. Mom gets an hour, 2 hour break. And for moms, set an intention each day or each week of how you're going to take care of yourself. Because when you set that intention, it keeps you from kind of breaking the promise to yourself for the week, and you're more likely to do it. And realize, it may feel a little bit like a chore at first, but as you continue that habit, it will be the thing you start to look forward to each week and that you make time for.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you again for taking the time to come and chat with us. It's always a pleasure to have you join us.
Love being here. Thank you.
Absolutely. Ladies and gentlemen, Jessica Seidel, licensed clinical social worker supervisor. We break the cycle here every week on Thursday at 12:30 p.m. Central Standard Time. We'll see you next week with another guest, God willing. We love you. We'll see you then. Take care.